And because of this painting is filled with symbolism. It's filled with gestures. It's filled with poses of the different figures. It represents different aspects of Jesus' teaching in their own lives. It's one of the earliest paintings, which is an example of what's known as a sacred conversation. Hi, this is Anita from 5 Minutes with Art. One of my favorite painters, if you've been listening to my podcast at all, of course, is Leonardo da Vinci. And I really love a lot of his paintings, but by far my favorite painting is his painting of the Last Supper. Some time ago I did a podcast about, did Leonardo da Vinci believe in God? And, I personally believe that he did believe in God because of the fact that he couldn't have painted the Last Supper without some knowledge about, Jesus, Christianity, and about God. Otherwise, he just could not have painted this Last Supper painting. The Last Supper painting, despite what many people think, is not in the Louvre in Paris. It is in Milan, Italy, and it's in a church there. But what's really interesting about the Last Supper, I'm not going to talk too much about where it's located today, but I want to talk a little bit more about the Last Supper painting itself and what makes it such an iconic and such a great painting of the Last Supper. One thing that makes it such an iconic painting is that Leonardo da Vinci captured what he felt was a personality and reaction of the 12 apostles, exact moment when Christ said to them, "One of you is going to betray me." And because of this painting is filled with symbolism. It's filled with gestures. It's filled with poses of the different figures. It represents different aspects of Jesus' teaching in their own lives. It's one of the earliest paintings, which is an example of what's known as a sacred conversation, with Jesus at the center surrounded by the apostles. When you see the painting, you see that Jesus is right in the center. He almost has this sort of casual, sort of serene look about him. And the other 12 apostles are basically at the table. And what's interesting about this is they were divided up into 4 groups of 3 each. So, Leonardo da Vinci did that specifically on purpose. He divided them all up into these 4 groups with 3 in each group. And so he put a lot of symbolism into it. On the table, there's some bread. And of course, we could say, the bread can have something to do with the Holy Sacrament, also the wine. And it could also have something to do with symbolism that, Christ is considered by Christians to be the bread of life. So, group 1 of the apostles, which is the first group, is with Bartholomew, James Minor, and Andrew. And they're all surprised. They're all symbolically looking at Christ. So they all have this surprised look on their face, like, what? What are you telling us about that? One of us is going to betray you. And so they sort of have this surprised look, and they're all looking towards Christ. The second group of the apostles is Jesus Iscariot. He's kind of taken aback, and he's clutching his purse that has the coins in it, the symbol of the 30 coins of silver. Peter's defiant, and he's holding fast to a knife. And John, the youngest apostle, starts swooning back, almost like he's crying out in pain. And then the third group of apostles, you have Thomas, and this is on the other side of Christ, there at the table. He's upset, and he's pointing his finger, almost doubting what he hears. James, the major, looks shocked and is reaching towards Christ, while Philip is leaning in, almost like he does not think he heard correctly. Like, what? What are you saying? One of us is going to betray you? And then the fourth group of the apostles is really quite interesting because they're not looking at Christ at all. In the final group, Matthew and Thaddeus are basically turning to Simon in hope that somehow Simon's going to give them some kind of answer. So when you look at this Last Supper painting and you look at the way Leonardo da Vinci divided up these 4 different groups, you can see how these groups sort of all had different reactions and they had, different ways that they reacted to this message that Christ was giving them. And then in the center of this all is Christ there with this very serene look on his face and almost like this resignation that I know this is going to happen. That is what makes it one of the greatest Christian pieces of art that has ever been produced. If you'd like to read more about this, more about the Guide to the Last Supper and see these different groups of the apostles that are there, we'll put a link to our blog that you can look at and check out about this. We really love Leonardo da Vinci. He's one of the greatest, painters that ever lived. And this Last Supper shows that he truly was a master of art. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you joining with us for just even 5 minutes each week to learn a little bit about art and some of the great artists that have ever lived. We'd like to thank those who helped put this together, specifically Rico. We'd like to thank you, our listeners. We know without you, it would not be possible. Thank you so much.